Gareth O'Shea John, counterintuition.com. Thank you so much for listening to this one. Going to keep it fairly brief. This one's just a quick check-in on parenting. Kind of where I'm at right now. Me and my wife, we're looking at parenting books and lectures and podcasts and all sorts. Any kind of information we get. I got a few stacks of books in my house right now, and I'm working my way through them. Just where we're at. I know, novel idea, actually researching parenting before having children. This is obviously one of the the things that you would expect to be done by most people, but it apparently isn't as common as I thought it was. I just figured that you would spend more time, reading some books or listening to some experts in the field, than you would for the amount of time you spend researching what car to get next or your next mobile phone. It seems that it's pretty crazy to me. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, novel idea, research beforehand. So first bit of advice, as not even a parent yet, but I think fairly self-evident. So what I'm discovering is, first of all, the majority of the literature is absolutely sickening, despicable and horrible. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the kind of things that and maybe this is why parents aren't. I mean, they might have looked at it and gone, oh, but my suspicion is that it's not necessarily that way, because a lot of this literature actually backs up current parenting practices, which I find absolutely abhorrent, and really just mirroring exactly the kind of practices that were done to women 50 years ago and slaves 200 years ago. I mean, it's the same kind of treatment to a group of individuals who don't have a voice, right? So it's what you would expect if you have a non-represented group. Slaves obviously were not represented anywhere. I mean, you had a huge political class that did not represent slaves. You had a huge, you had media and you had all this, but none of them had any benefit from slaves because slaves were dependent, right? So, and this of course is the same for women up until quite recently. Women were not represented. Women did not have any, means to acquire resources and become valuable to powerful groups, and therefore it didn't matter what they have to say, and it didn't matter if you treat them right or treat them wrong. You could just, you could smack them around the place. You could tell them to shut up, and that's kind of that's how it was up until relatively recently. And there's still remnants, and of course now it seems to be swinging back the other way. There's still a lot of dysfunction, but at least people recognize the issue, that we have something to appeal to. We can say, oh, that's slavery, or oh, that's abuse towards women. You have something to appeal to and say. It may not be perfect how people look at it, but they still have the appeal. Where it comes to kids, you say, yeah, that's child abuse, but child abuse is basically, putting out cigarettes on their forehead and stuff. I mean, that's what people call child abuse. It's like it has to be this crazy extreme thing, and not simply yelling at a kid demanding obedience, or not even yelling. I mean, stuff like timeouts and all this kind of stuff. So I'm looking as an expression of or an example of part of these parenting practices. I found this blog post, how to get your child to obey you in 7 steps with pictures, and this is fairly indicative. This kind of sums up exactly what I'm talking about, and I think from this podcast, I should be able to put together a very, very strong argument just using this example and using just a couple of little logical steps. So I'll quickly just go through this blog post. The first point is, once the child is exhibiting a negative behavior, and actually before I go into this, just imagine as I go, every now and then, if you want to kind of swap out the child for just say a woman, or just say a African taken from Africa 200 years ago against their will and are chained up. I mean, this is literally what you can do with this. Okay, so just imagine as I'm going through this stuff that I'm not necessarily even talking about a child, but just compare what you would do now if today you were to do this to a regular person, or to a regular woman. I mean, this is what it would be. Okay, so number one, once they are exhibiting a negative behavior, hitting you, for example, in brackets, bend down to their height and look them in the eye. You do not want to intimidate them, but you do want them to take you seriously. Okay, first of all, that's kind of a contradiction. That is intimidation when you are a large human being and they're very small, when that's intimidation. Okay, so I just want to make that point from the off. Number 2, say if you do that thing again, you are going to go in timeout, the corner, the chair, the step, etc. This is the child's warning. He or she now knows what behavior you want him or her to stop, and if he or she continues to do it, there will be a negative consequence. Now, this is part of really this kind of exposes the mentality he or she now knows what behavior you want him or her to stop. Okay, so what you have first of all is a dictatorial setup where the parent is commanding something of the child. Now, of course, you might say, "I look, this crazy. The kid doesn't know yet, and the parent needs to show them." Now, again, I want to say that this is the same argument that you could say, okay, 50 years ago, a woman, which was true back then because they really didn't have resources. They were restricted and they were kept, and the tools weren't given to them. The logical tools, the language, they weren't able to understand a lot of things that they understand today. Okay, and this is because of the abuse. This is because they were kept under. Okay, so this is not the cause. The cause is not that a child is not born just wanting to kick and scream and hit you. That's all. Like, hitting is an expression of, I don't have the words. I don't know how to tell you. You haven't given them to me yet. Okay, so it just means that the parent hasn't spent enough time with the child. I mean, if they're big enough to hit you and mean it in like an aggressive way, they're big enough to understand words. If it's a child and they just, they're trying to like smack a bottle away from you or something like that, that's okay. That's just, they're just, that's not a threat. So it's not a big deal. And there's really no attitude behind that. It's just, get that milk away from me. I'm not hungry, whatever. So don't give them the milk, obviously enough. Anyway, so but the behavior that you want him or her to stop, you see, you're teaching the child that if there's a behavior to go by, forget the principle. You need to do what we tell you. And so that's what you're training them. You see, you're not training. It's not like you can train them this way and then all of a sudden they'll just kind of exhibit it themselves. It doesn't work like that. You actually are creating the mentality where they become dependent on instructions, not simply learning the instructions, not desiring instruction. They won't want to learn from you. They will just happen to learn from you. Whenever they veer off, you're going to be there to tell them stop, and so for that reason they're just going to fly blind, and they're not going to ever question what they're doing, and they're not going to ever ask until much later on. I mean, not ever, but it's strong discouragement. Okay, so moving on. Number 3, if the child exhibits the same behavior again after warning, pick them up if they're light enough, or take their arm and guide them to a place where the timeout will take place. For younger kids, a corner or step is ideal. For school-age children, a chair or room is a better idea. Do not send them to their bedroom. This is where they sleep, relax, and play with their toys. The same room should not be used as a relaxation place and a punishment. Okay, fine, makes sense. Try a guest room or office or any room the child has no interest in. This way, all their attention will be focused on what got them in the timeout and how they should change their behavior. Now, I want to make it clear that what they're advocating here is prison. This is what you're doing. You're punishing the child with prison. You're ostracizing them, putting them in a place where they can't communicate, where nobody's going to talk to them, where they're not allowed to talk to anybody. This is solitary confinement, okay? For a child, now, you might think that I'm being extreme here, but that is what it is to a child. When you're a child, this is what you're doing. You are putting a child away, depriving them of human connection, depriving them of their appeal. They can't negotiate. They can't speak about what has gone wrong. Number 4, bend down to their level. And this is again after they're in, and this is part of the sickness of it. Bend down to their level. I mean, this is a small creature here. We're not talking about taking on someone your own size. It's the fact that they reference it again. Bend down to their level. It just that really turns my stomach, because you're fully aware that you're dealing with a small defenseless human being here. So number 4, bend down to their level and make eye contact to them and explain to them that they are going to be taking a time out now and the reason for it. Say something like, you did this thing after I told you not to, so now you are going to stay here for a certain amount of minutes. The proper allotted time for a timeout is 1 minute per the child's age. It is usually helpful to set a timer. This is like so sick, because this is just, it's premeditated. It's not even this emotional stuff. I mean, if it was the fact that you're just emotional and you end up acting out and doing a horrible thing to the kid, that would even be better than this, because this is actually sitting down and planning out how to manipulate a child. I mean, this is crazy to me. Okay, so number 5, walk away. This is one of the most important steps. Go back to what you were doing prior to putting him or her in a timeout. Do not stand there and babysit them and force them to stay in the timeout. Do not say anything else to them. Answering them back is only giving them the attention they want from you. Instead of focusing on changing their behavior, they're focusing on getting out of timeout and or getting you to talk to them. Now, this sums up a lot of what I'm talking about, okay? So walk away. What this is social ostracism. Okay, and as a parent, okay, let me just make it clear: the child. I know it sounds crazy, but just bear with me. The child did not ask to be born. That's really true, and I know that you can say, that this kind of stuff comes out when they're teenagers, and they say, "I never asked to be born. I didn't want you as a parent." Any of this kind of stuff, okay. But it's true. They didn't ask to be born. You have them as a prisoner. They can't leave. If you do a terrible job, they can't leave. This is the point. And not only can they not leave, whatever you do, they have to idolize. Even if it doesn't make logical sense, even if they're going to be rebelling all the time through it, they still have to idolize you as a parent, because if they don't, if they go, I mean, first of all, they have nothing to compare it against, right? Until they go over to their friend's house. And then you might be exposed. But even then, they might just say, oh, that parent is kind of mad. Because my parents, if you were to question your own parents, then you would have to do something about it, okay? You would have to say, oh, my parents are mad, I'm going to run away. And there's a study, I can't remember the doctor's name, she's a lady who's been studying children who run away from home, from abusive situations, and she's found there's something very, very courageous about these children, that they have the guts to run away and just kind of forget everything, forget the fact that they may not have food, they may not have money, this kind of stuff. They just want to get out of that environment, and she's found that there's this increase. She wants to know what it is that causes kids to have this amazing courage to run away. It's a tragic, horrible situation to have to run away, but this is something that we've neglected from children right now, and this is one of the steps that is instrumental in keeping them in the home. This is just training them. This is not a human relationship. I mean, this is not something you would do to your wife. It's not something you would do to your friends. It's not something you would do to your family. It's not something you would do to even a waiter in a restaurant, or somebody at the checkout. And like, you don't do this stuff to anybody else except for children. And the reason is that the children can't really defend themselves. They're too small. So here's another. So this is one of the most important steps. Go back to what you were doing prior to putting him or her in timeout. Now, bear in mind what they're saying here, and this is kind of revealing. Now, I know you can't spend every second of every day with your child. That's not really what this is about. But you should be spending 99% of it. Okay. Now, that might be a bold claim, but if you have children, and you are, like I said, you're basically kidnapping. You have to make those early years the best years ever. You have to be Superman and Supermom. You have to be incredible, because they can't leave, right? This is the one relationship in their life that is the only legitimate relationship where there is force involved. Okay, like, with the government, there's force involved too, but that's illegitimate, and people can arrive at that themselves. And if they don't want to, that's fine. But with a parent, there's no way out of that. That is a relationship that's forced. Because you've brought them into this world, you have to guarantee them. You have to make sure that they're going to have a good time. If you were to ask your kid, right, let's imagine your kid's going to live to the age of 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, let's say, I don't know, up to the age of 10 or 12, and you're going to ask them, okay, if let's say you were only going to live to the age of 12, that was it. You're going to stop. That's going to be your life from 1 to the age of, or 0 to the age of 12. Would you do it again? Would you say your life was worth it? That would be a question. I mean, if you could ask them until the age of 5, did you have a good life? They could say, they're excited, they have no suicidal tendencies or this kind of stuff. But that's because they know that they get to leave at some point. If their relationship with the parent was all of their life, that was going to be their entire life, would they live it again? Would they do it again? Would it be worth it? And I think you get some surprising answers from a lot of parents, or from a lot of children. So, okay, so what's being said here is go back to what you were doing prior to putting him or her in a timeout. What they're saying is you weren't paying attention to your child. Okay, children need attention. And yes, they do need to learn at some point that you don't get to spend all the time with them. They need to learn that. They need to learn not to be so narcissistic and have everything about them. But you only do that by spending time with them. You show them how to not be narcissistic by spending time with them. You play with them, and they say, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and you say, okay, and you do it, and you follow on, and all of a sudden you're just getting incredibly bored. And you're starting to not enjoy spending time with your child. Okay, so now your relationship's in danger. You don't keep going, or you don't say, okay, now I have to go to work, now I have to do this. You actually explain to the child, look, and the age is going to be up to yourself. I mean, you're going to know what child or what age is good, where your child is at. It's really not about the age, but it's where your child is, right? So, but you explain to them, look, this really isn't fun for me. Here's what's fun. Here's why, and you just explain it, and it's over and over. It's a repetitive process. It's going to take a long time, but that's how a child learns. That's how a child learns, by spending time with them. They don't learn that not to be so needy by you walking away from them. They learn not to be needy by you spending time with them and explaining stuff like that. so that they won't be so demanding on you. They'll start to empathize. They start to, they start to see the world from other people's perspectives, not just their own. That's from spending time with them. Okay, that's not from leaving them alone. So, this time out. Obviously, the tool here is I want to do something else. I don't want to spend time with my child. So he was misbehaving, probably doing something in order to get my attention, or just to keep himself occupied because he's in this prison. So he's come up with this crazy way of keeping himself occupied. And all of a sudden, he's violated one of my mandates. So he gets a timeout. This is crazy. Why weren't you spending time with him? Go back to whatever you were doing prior to putting him in a timeout. I mean, that's just an admission that you're just not doing a good job. Okay, so do not stand there. Now, again, that's not the only reason you would put a kid in a timeout, but typically you'll find that if you're having a good time with your kid, if you're spending time with them, you're at the playground, you're with them, and you're with them 100%. You're not just standing there physically with them, but you're with them. You're in a relationship. You're having fun together. I doubt you've ever had to put your child in a timeout. I would imagine the only time that you have to put your child in a timeout is when you are not spending time with them, or when you're commanding them to do something entirely arbitrary. These arbitrary rules that change all the time, and you tell the kid this one day, because there's no principle, there's no foundational principle. In the same way, you don't have these kind of things with friends and family. I mean, your spouse or your friends. I mean, you don't have arbitrary rules for them. You don't say, hey, I want you to pick up your shoes now at this time, and I want you to go to bed at this hour. You don't do that kind of stuff. You explain stuff if you have stuff that you desire, and they do the same for you, and you just pretty much just hang out. I mean, it's not like you have to sit there and teach them all this stuff. You just hang out, and this stuff just comes up. It just rubs off. So do not stand there and babysit them and force them to stay in timeout. Do not say anything else to them. This is withdrawing human relationship as a punishment. This is sick. This is really sick. This is what the kid is craving. The kid is craving this stuff because they're not getting it, and they're saying, "Oh no, withdraw that as a punishment." That's like to actually say that in a post is crazy to me. That's so sick. Anyway. Answering them back is only giving them the attention they want from you. Now, I know what they're saying, I guess the negative attention, but there's no such thing. There's no such thing. The kid wants attention. You have to give them that. They're incredibly needy. They need to be held. They need to be hugged. They need to be touched. They need to be spoken to all the time. If you can't do that, then you're not a good parent, okay? Now, that might be really harsh. I mean, maybe you have to work. Maybe you have to, you don't have a lot of money or whatever. But you should not have had a child if that's the case. If you didn't have substantial savings built up, you didn't have a stable income, and your plan was basically to just ship the kid off into daycare and then off into school, then that's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing to do. So, okay, I'll just carry on. I'm almost finished on this article here. Answering them back is only giving them the attention they want from you. Instead of focusing on changing their behavior, they are focusing on getting out of timeout and getting you to talk to them. Obviously, they don't want to be there. They want the relationship with the parent. You're withdrawing the relationship with the parent as a punishment, and that's absolutely nuts. You should never, ever withdraw a relationship as a punishment, because you don't do that with your friends. You don't do that with your wife or your husband. Imagine doing that. I'm not going to talk to you all night now. Well, what does that do? That's just destructive for both of you. That's just hurting your relationship. Anyway, number 6, follow through. If the child gets out of timeout, place them back there and restart the timer while still saying nothing. Not even, I'm restarting the timer now that you got out. No matter how many times they get up, do not let them go until they've sat there for the full amount of time without getting out. If you give in after the 5th or 10th time that they've got out of timeout, they will just learn that as soon as you get tired of putting them back, they are free to go, instead of learning that there will be consequences. Again, the premeditated nature of this is just, it's chilling. It's really robotic and scary. I mean, it is not a human relationship. Again, I'd like to remind anybody who thinks that this is not entirely irrational, that whatever you're doing that your child is distracting you from, whether it's making the dinner or reading a book or, whatever, that book that you want to read or that dinner that you want to make is not going to be holding your hand on your deathbed. Okay? They're not going to be visiting you in a hospital when you're too old to take care of yourself. Okay? That's going to be your child. And again, if it was going to be the first few years of their life and that's all it would be, would they want to relive it? You need to make their childhood so fantastic. It has to be amazing. It has to be just amazing. Like, all you're doing is spending time with them. All you're doing is just spilling everything you know into this kid. You know, it's okay if you don't know a bunch of stuff and you feel like you don't have anything to pass on. You can learn together. You don't have to be the big guy who knows everything, or the big mom who knows everything already. It doesn't matter if you don't know stuff. You can sit down and learn stuff together. Get some good books, get some good courseware, whatever. I mean, just whatever you want to study. Talk to each other about what you want to learn, and learn it together. You don't need to be teaching them stuff that you already comprehend fully. Why can't it be that be an activity like you play, board games, or play soccer or frisbee or whatever? Have learning together. No commanding them. You're not demanding they do this and that, because why in the world would you need to do that if you have a proper relationship? You don't have to command people. You don't need, a healthy relationship. Imagine like it was 50 years ago. I'm married to my wife, and I tell her, hey, you need to go to bed at 9 o'clock. You need to make my dinner now. If you don't, you're going in a timeout. If you don't, I'm not going to give you money for shoes. I mean, that's what this is. And I know people around the world still do this, and we all would rightly look at them and go, hey, you guys are, that's a really dysfunctional relationship. That dude needs some help, and he's abusing that woman. But it's okay for children. Why? Why is it okay for children? Oh, because they're irrational. That's what we said about women 50 years ago. That's what we said about slaves 200 years ago. Well, I say we. It wasn't me. Anyway, number 7, ask for an apology. Once the child has sat there for the full amount of time, explain to them, while getting down to their level and making eye contact again, that's the third time they've referenced that, why they were in timeout. Then ask for an apology. Say something along the lines of, I put you in timeout because you did this thing after I told you not to. Now you owe me an apology. After they give you a sincere apology, meaning they looked you in the eyes and said it with a genuine tone instead of whining, shouting, or mumbling it under their breath, give them a hug and a kiss, and after the timeout, go about your day normally and do not drag it on. Right. Okay. So after you've subjected them to this horrible punishment, simply for them expressing the only way they know how, obviously they don't have the words to explain what's wrong, why they don't know what their feelings are, they don't know why they're angry or they want to act out, they don't know why they're frustrated, they don't know why I shouldn't do this thing or do this thing because it seems like a perfectly reasonable thing to do, pick this thing up and whatever, and you know something better about it, they don't understand it. Then for you to punish them and then ask them for an apology afterwards. I mean, imagine this, okay? Imagine you as a parent discover there's a bunch of stuff that you were doing wrong, right? And the kid comes back to you and says, look, you messed me up when I was younger. And they said, look, I'm sorry, but we did the best that we knew at the time, okay? We did the best. Well, apply that same standard to the child. So the child is, acting out whatever way they are. They just don't understand stuff. Well, that's fine. And they're doing the best with what they knew. They go into school and they get an F on their test. Well, I'm sorry, I did the best with what I knew. You wouldn't be able to fail them on tests if you had that same standard. So if you're going to put a child to a standard where, they're 5 years of age, or 4 or 3 or 2 or whatever, I don't know, whatever age people do this crazy stuff to, I guess maybe older than that again. Whatever age it is that you're doing this to, they have so much less information than you, right? And specifically because a lot of the time the parents are not spending time with them in the first place to be able to explain this stuff in a natural relationship as opposed to in the moment, like when everything is going crazy, which is not when you explain stuff. You explain stuff throughout. It's all preparation. All of it is preparation. As soon as the kid is acting out, that is not the time to address it. That is not the time to address it, okay? That is the time to, oh my goodness, I'm so frustrated. I need to do something about it. That's what this is. Timeouts are, I'm frustrated with my child. I don't know what else to do, so I'm just going to isolate him until he figures it out. And of course, he won't figure it out. All he'll figure out is that you're a dictator, and if I want to please my parents, I just have to do whatever they say. And of course, this gets frustrating. I mean, you're talking about years and years and years, and they'll go through all these phases where they're rebelling. I mean, it's because of that. They don't have. I've never rebelled against my wife. I've never rebelled against my friends. I don't do that because we have a relationship where we can openly communicate. We can openly talk. We don't need to do that. Children rebel because they don't know how to talk to you because you're a psychopath. Okay, you're nuts. Maybe not you listening, but parents out there in general. So you don't want a child to obey you, okay? You don't want that. Obedience is, I don't care if it's rational or not. I'm just going to do the thing, okay? You'll find that in the concentration camps And I hate to be always bringing up, well, I hate to bring up, Nazis and whatever, because it always comes back to that, and you kind of lose credibility when you keep referencing it. But it's let's say the gulags. Okay, so the gulags in Russia, you'll find a very, very high percentage of obedient people in the gulags. Okay, we don't say that's a good thing. They were obedient because of negative ramifications. Children, apart from, like, when they go into a timeout, and there's a lot of work been done on this, like the psychology of this, and even the physiology of this over the last, we're talking the period of the last 60 years here. We're not talking about new research. We're talking about this stuff has been around for a long, long time, which drives me mad that nobody is talking about it, okay? Where they're able to measure the hippocampus in the child's brain, they're able to measure the neofrontal cortex, which shrinks, the hippocampus, which grows after these kinds of things. Even simple stuff like timeouts, where the physiology of the brain is actually affected to the point where the child is actually less and less able to rationally process information, less able to control their impulses, less able to control current gratification and put it off for future gratification. Okay, so instead of saying, I need this thing now, they're able to say, well, maybe I don't need this thing now. Maybe I really want this thing now, but I know that maybe in an hour's time I'm going to be bored with it, so maybe I'll save the money. We'll save up for something better. And the neofrontal cortex is that the hippocampus is the fight or flight mechanism, which they see everything as there's going to be negative ramifications, so I'm not going to do the thing. And they end up getting all sorts of anxiety and attacks, and they don't even know why half the time. They're just nervous about everything. It's terrible, and so they find it very difficult to self-discipline. If you discipline from outside by force and by you must obey me, they will find it more and more difficult later on. And in fact, aside from the immediate compliance that you get at the time, which is absolutely true, you do get immediate compliance with timeouts and things like that. You're actually developing chronic disobedience long term. It's an actual medical term. The very thing that you're using to try and discipline the child is actually causing them difficulty in processing their own kind of discipline, their own self-discipline. So it's not true that they learn internal discipline from external discipline. They learn how to, like, I have never been tempted to run across the road when there's traffic flying my way. Okay, and the reason I've never been tempted is I understand the danger. It's not because somebody tells me not to. I've never been tempted to murder anybody in any real sense. Not because I was told not to, not because it's illegal. I don't want to do that because I know I have intimate knowledge of what that entails. I don't want to take a life. You know what I mean? That's an understanding. Discipline comes from understanding. It does not come from irrational judgments passed down from somebody much larger than you. And this is, again, the science has been around for such a long time. And anybody who's interested in any links to any, we're talking scholarly stuff here. No, this isn't just some blog post or whatever. I can give you some links if you need me to email you some links to good books and to some good lectures and whatever. So now you owe me an apology. Okay, what does the child owe you again? Going back to the idea that the child has never consented to being born, didn't ask for you to be their parent. What do they owe you? Okay, they owe you nothing. What have you given them? Okay, aside from punishing them when it's inconvenient for you to address a real problem, aside from spending your whole day with them, every day. We're not talking. You don't get to have a job and have kids. Like, you just don't. Okay, you don't. If that's the way it is, it's sad. You have to find somebody who would be an amazing replacement for you if you have to work. But of course, the money that you would spend for somebody like that, and I guess maybe grandparents or something. Maybe something like that. Maybe. But it's just like the least ideal circumstance in the world to just have a kid and have a job. It's not possible to be a parent and have a full-time job. It's just not possible. So what have you given them? You saddled them with debt. We're talking about billions and billions of euros and dollars in debt. The kids in the West, there's an intuitive understanding of that as they get older. But that's what we've given them in real terms. They get this debt. They get this horrible economic setup where we've bought bonds based on their future capacity to earn. Okay, so that's what we've given them. We ship them off to daycare where they get sick. This is a bunch of kids all together in a room who have barely developed any antibodies, and they're all sick. One kid has the flu, another kid has nits. They're all sick all the time. It's disgusting, and they're presided over by minimum wage workers who know nothing about children. They just, here, play with this toy, and if a kid is crying, let's put him in a timeout. That's what happens. So it's just a continuation of that horrible. And what is the child learning from that? I would rather go and work somewhere than spend time with you. I would rather spend €9 an hour or whatever it is, minimum wage, to have this clown here. I don't mean to be, I don't want to offend anybody in daycare, but come on. I mean, you're not a parent. Like, it's not the same thing. And you're telling a child that's the extent of our relationship. I would prefer to have my career now and do my thing. And you yell at them and you hit them, and maybe you don't hit them, but a lot of parents still hit their kids. And when they don't act in a way that you deem arbitrarily necessary. I mean, where did you get this standard from? Where did you determine that, Anyway, look, you haven't worked it out with the kid. I mean, there's been no arrangement. Their ability to negotiate is you don't give them any ability to negotiate. You don't talk to them. You don't, And again, this comes from relationship. And eventually, you're going to send them into a prison. Otherwise known as school. I'm not being funny. It's prison. It really is prison. And all of the influence that they get is horizontal. It doesn't come from adults. We talk about school being this socializing thing where they get. I've done a podcast on this, so if you want to go back and listen, it's just a couple of podcasts ago. Why should you send your children to school? If you want to listen to that, a little more detail, but they learn. The bullies and the psychopaths and the prettiest people get ahead in school, and that's how they learn then values. And of course, the sensitive and intelligent kids kind of have to hide away in the corner and receive the odd beating here and there and the slagging and whatever. And then, of course, when they break out of all that, they will run from their parents. They'll run from the school system, the intelligent kids at least. And they'll start a business and be independent. Or what's quite natural for kids is they escape into video games. I mean, intelligent and sensitive kids and sensitive kids escape into video games. They escape into books. They escape into comics, into literature, where they have some degree of control and understanding, and the parameters are set. There is no arbitrary control. There's no arbitrary that you get to decide what happens. Even with the story, you don't necessarily get to decide what happens, but the parameters are set. The parameters are understandable. There's clear understanding, especially with all these modern video games where you can, a lot of the emphasis now is you spend the first half hour of a game just developing your character, changing your face around, putting on a hat, putting on different clothes, and even down to the colors, down to or if it's a racing game, you customize your car. I mean, this is all the control over your identity. This is what it is, because you don't have one in your own home. You don't have one at home. It's so sad. And then parents criticize them. You're playing too many video games. Come back to the real world, or come down for dinner and join us instead of playing a video game. They would this is what's sad. They would rather play a video game than spend time with you at dinner time. That's telling you something about you. That's not telling you anything about the video game or the kid. Okay? They're playing those video games because you suck as a parent. So compete. Make compelling conversation. Make a compelling relationship with your child so that they won't desire. How about this? How about this for a novel idea? Why don't you actually sit down and play a video game with your kid? How about you actually pick up a second controller for whatever, 20 or 30 quid and play a video game with your child? Whatever the game is, whatever they want to play, just play it. It doesn't matter if you get any enjoyment out of it. I mean, how much enjoyment you get out of it when you go to the cinema to see some PG movie with a bunch of little cars. I know some of them are pretty funny, but really, there's stuff you could be doing much better with your time. But if you love your kid, you go places with them, and it's fun because you're doing it with your kid. It's not fun because the movie is so great, or the video game is so great, or whatever you're doing, the park is so great. You're doing it because if you have a relationship with someone, you don't mind what you're doing. You can do anything. You can do anything if you have a good relationship together. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you're doing. So do this stuff with them. And so this is what I've been learning. And, really, really getting pretty bent out of shape lately. And I don't mean to be critical, but it is shocking that the way parents do carry on with their kids. And to be honest, I mean, I know this is this really, really strong thing to say, but I can't find any other way of putting it. There really isn't any other solution I can think of. If you can't spend time with your kid, if you have to work, if you value your career, there's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. If you didn't plan to have a kid, or if you have to work, or you just can't. You can't be a parent without timeouts, without hitting them, without commanding them, without teaching them loyalty. I mean, what do you need loyalty for if you're a good parent? Loyalty. That's when you suck. When you're a terrible person, you need loyalty. That's what loyalty's for. You don't need loyalty if you have a good relationship. If you can't parent full time with your kid, you need to give them up for adoption. I know it's a crazy thing to say, given the standard of parenting today, but really, this is a person who has no choice. You need to make that choice for them if you want what's best for them. Not just to have a kid who you can say, oh yeah, I have a kid and we do this and we do that and we have Christmas together and it's nice and we're good. If you're going to plan on sending your kid to daycare and to school and that, and you're going to for half of their childhood, you're not going to be with them, and the other half you're commanding them and pushing them around, and maybe 5% of the time you're having a good time. You need to give them to a home who wants them. They need that. So yeah, just some stimulating stuff I've been going over the last while, and just cramming in this parenting stuff, and it's something pretty insane. It's quite a responsibility, and I really had no idea how much it entailed. But I'm absolutely going through with it. It seems like I can't imagine how it could be if I respect everything I've just been talking about, which I absolutely will. I'm not saying I'm going to be a perfect parent, but just that I'm going to do my absolute best. I'm going to grab all the material, all the books, all the lectures, get everything, have a bunch of money saved up, have a bunch of plans, have a bunch of stuff, and just plan to spend as much time as possible, the short time that I get with my child or children, and be the absolute best dad that I can be. And I know the same goes for my wife. We've been going through a lot of this stuff together, so it's fantastic that we're on the same page on this stuff. And it's hard not to be on the same page once you respect basic principles, basic morality, basic everything. I mean, it really is basic. It's just that because it's gone on so long, I really don't blame parents for being kind of out of the loop because it's so common. But seeing as the material is available, it is critically important to just grab as much as you can, and really, I would welcome any challenge to what I've been talking about, but I really don't see how it could be, how there could be, unless it's more constructive. I don't see any criticisms against what I'm saying. I could only really imagine that there would be stuff that is better suggestions again than what I'm saying, more peaceful, more insightful. So thanks so much for listening. Head on over to counterintuition.com where you'll find a bunch more videos, articles, and podcasts. You can grab my book, What's Civic Duty. That's on Amazon, but you can get it through the website. And you'll find me on Facebook and Twitter, but again, all that through the homepage. And do please comment and like and subscribe and post on Twitter and post on Facebook and email me. Do whatever. Just do everything possible to get involved. I'm more than happy to hear from you and answer your questions. We're going to be doing a question, addressing the questions, I guess, with either Alec or Jonty, maybe the two guys together, get them back again. It's been a while since we've teamed up, so I'm going to get them back in, and we'll go through some of the questions that have been pouring in over the last few weeks. Plenty of activity. I mean, I'm absolutely... my mind is blown, the amount of activity that's been going on in Counterintuition, particularly the YouTube channel. We're dealing about 250,000 views right now in the last it's just about 2 months now, not even 2 months, and we got 250,000 views, and these are not short podcasts, these are not quick videos here, this is hefty content. So I'm absolutely delighted to have hit on something like this, and we'll continue to bring more content that you want, and of course by getting engaged, by getting involved, and I just mean leaving comments and suggestions. That'll steer the content somewhat, but in the absence of those, I got plenty to talk about anyway. So thanks again for listening, and please do grab more podcasts. They're freely available. You can download them from the website, you can download them from the link on YouTube, or just listen on YouTube, and have an absolutely wonderful day.